Okay, guys, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Ben. He is a first-time Malinois owner. He got this dog not as a puppy. He didn't get her as a 6-week-old, 7-week-old, 8-week-old puppy. He got this dog already at 6, 7 months of age. Had a previous owner, and this guy has never owned a Malinois before. His first working dog. He has done a lot of research. He has done his homework. He has talked to trainers, but he is going through what a lot of new people go through. It's something that you guys have gone through. I've gone through it, where you're kind of new and you don't know where to look. You start doing your research, but then you get a lot of information. And even though a lot of it is good information, you don't know where to start. So I talked to Ben. He reached out to me. He asked me a few questions through social media. And I told him, hey, man, why don't we do an episode on my podcast where I answer all of your questions? And since you are new to a working dog, and this is something that a lot of people relate to, I think this would be a beneficial episode for a lot of listeners. And that's what this interview is for. And I hope you guys enjoy it.
There we go.
Hello. Hello.
Hey, William.
Hey, Ben. How's it going?
Good, and you?
Good. Thank you. I'm glad it finally went through.
Yeah, finally.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for for this show. I know you have some questions about your dog, your young dog.
Yep.
And I know some of the listeners are going to probably relate to some of the questions that you have, maybe some of the struggles that comes with having a young working dog.
Oh yeah.
So I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
No problem, man. I appreciate you for having me on and helping me. Actually, man, it's a huge help to me.
Yeah, I'm very very looking forward to this conversation. So, you have a young working dog, female. She's roughly about a year old, right?
Pretty close, almost. I think. Yes, she's about 11, almost 11 months, or right at about.
Okay, about 11 months of age.
Mm-hmm.
And you just to kind of give some of the listeners a little bit of a background. You didn't get her when she was 7 weeks old. You got her when she was already about 6 months of age, 9 months of age.
I think 6 to 7. So I've had her about 4 months. Yeah, so I got her about 6 months.
6 months of age. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that a lot of people do with working dogs is they get a puppy, 7 weeks of age, 8 weeks of age, and then they get this nice clean slate, and they get to do a lot of it when it's easy, when the puppy is not doing all kinds of crazy things. You have a 6-month-old puppy. I mean, 6 months of age, that's already a big dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have two dogs, right? You told me that you had two labs. So you've had dogs in the past.
Oh yeah, I've always had a dog. Always.
Okay. And so is it a fair assessment to say that this is your first working dog?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, what are some of the things that, based on our conversation, you've done your research. You were telling me, you've watched some videos on YouTube. You looked up some stuff. Based on the stuff that you told me, you brought up some names that you were looking up. You've done all the reading, all the watching of the videos. You looked up people, like Ivan Balabanov, Michael Ellis, Bart Bellon. You've even talked to some trainers that have given you some tips here and there. So you've done your research. You're not like, the average person that gets into this blind and they're not willing to put in the work. You obviously want to put in the work, and you've done your research. But the thing about doing research and looking at the videos, there are so many hundreds of videos out there. It's just so much information. It can be very difficult to pinpoint and get exactly what works for you when, like you could look up how to teach a dog to sit, for instance, and they'll come up like, 10 different videos on how to do that. Would you say like that's something that you kind of run into? What are some of the things that you found maybe a little bit frustrating about looking at a lot of information? Because you're not the only one. A lot of people find themselves doing something like this.
So I can tell you this much. One of the potential downfalls you see in a situation like that is, and I don't know if it's the correct terminology, but you can kind of oversaturate, and
Yeah.
you can just kind of drown in content and things. And the thing is that if you're doing this on your own in that manner, like you have to have some sort of a plan, like, and to do that, I mean, it really needs you really need guidance. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest, the thing is, man, like in my case, when I have watched videos and tutorials and things like that from several different trainers, that also can be kind of a little too much. You know what I mean? Too
Mm-hmm.
early. I think one of the best things to do starting is, before you even like dive into the content, is research and determine, if you can, what system works best, or what system are you going to try? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what works for you, and choose that and go that route, because you can find yourself going off in other directions very easily with so much
Oh yeah.
out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in your place, I was in your shoes at some point in my career. So have a lot of dog trainers, and a lot of dog owners, a lot of sports people. That's exactly how we find ourselves. We go, okay, I want to get into this, or I want to learn how to make my dog a little bit better, or I want to learn how to get into the sport, or I want to learn this new career. So then you do your research, and you're like, oh my god, I don't know where to start. So it's a very relatable experience, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% in agreement I 100% agree with what you're saying, because I've been there. I know exactly how you feel. Now, what are some of the things that maybe you've tried with your dog, and kind of what have you done with some of the information that you've gotten, and what have you noticed? And just to give the listeners a little bit of background too, this is not just a working dog, but this is a very powerful working dog too. This dog has good bloodlines.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a dog that you found on Craigslist. This is a really nice dog.
Oh yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you've done with your pup?
Just worked basic obedience,
Mm-hmm.
recalls. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that, kind of to go back to our previous point, is depending on who you follow or who you kind of research, the processes with them are completely different. You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I've heard from some groups that you don't really do hardly any obedience early, because you don't want to uh, you know, be counterproductive or prevent holding them back in the bite work. And then I've heard
Mm-hmm.
from some that says, hey, none of that matters. Either your dog has drive and will bite, or it won't. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so with being so new, you don't really
Yeah.
know which is all right. Well, which side. So you got to kind of figure out what
Yeah.
works best for you.
So I'll
Try.
tell you. I'll tell you my perspective on that. And I've been working with working dogs, specifically with working dogs, for the past I'm going on 12 years now. And my first introduction into dog training was with working dogs from the very beginning. I didn't start the traditional, I'm going to work with pet dogs and then go into, working dogs.
Mhm.
I started with working dogs right from the beginning. Um, and so I was kind of flooded into this industry through working dogs, through the hard-headed, very motivated, but very hard-headed at times, very determined dogs. And I can tell you, I've seen the different schools of thought on that, and I've known people that are very accomplished. And when I say accomplished, people that they've gone to worlds in different protection sports, people that have competed at a and continue to compete at a very high level, that are kind of on those two sides. And I know from a new person's perspective like you, this can be very confusing, because this is something that is very very out there, where people will tell you, don't do obedience, like don't do a whole lot of obedience, focus on the bite work. And the idea is, the reason behind that is, basically they want the dog to focus on drive building, on the dog to feel very powerful, on the dog to have like no sense or not as much of a sense of boundary as it is into how do I become more and more powerful each day? How do I express my drives in a much more powerful way? So the one school of thought is, do that, and then once you have that sense of power, then we'll start doing some obedience. Then we'll start letting the dog understand what a sense of control, sense of boundaries are. And the main reason is, just as you said, because it's what you heard and what you told me, is you don't want to do obedience because there's this belief that obedience, whether it's through compulsion, so corrections, or whether it's through motivation, that it will give the dog a little bit of an inhibition when it comes to expressing their drives. And I've also, and the people that I've heard this from are very accomplished people. Like if I told you some names of people that have told me this, and what they've accomplished, you'd be like, well, then if that person said it, then it's got to be true. It's got to make sense.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I have also heard, again, from very accomplished people in different arenas, different sports, or even in the same sport, but just different people that are entirely the opposite of that. And the other school of thought is, we're working with the dog in obedience to let the dog think, to have the dog learn to learn, to love to learn, to love the problem solving aspect of obedience. And then separately, you work the bite work, you work the drive, and one does not impede the other. It won't affect the other. And it'd be easy if like all the accomplished people said one thing, and all the people that haven't accomplished anything say, oh no, it's this way. And then you go, well, that makes sense. I'm just going to listen to the accomplished people. If the very accomplished people tell me to do it this way, and clearly they're super, super, accomplished, they clearly know what they're doing, and the people that haven't accomplished anything say to do it the other way, I'm clearly going to go to the people that know what they're talking about. The problem here, though, is, from what you've heard, and a lot of people have, and myself included, when we're new, the problem is you see people, accomplished people that do know what they're talking about, have different sets of beliefs. It's almost like, like some people will believe in a certain religion. I'm getting slightly off topic here. I do that sometimes.
No problem.
But, some people go, no, this is the way it is. This is how spirituality is. This is what God is like. And then other people go, no, that's completely wrong. This is how it is.
Yeah.
And both sets of people can be very, very spiritual. And I find the same thing in dog training. And I know that is one thing that can be very frustrating to people that are new, like you. I run a protection club, and I do have the new, the new members occasionally, or the members that are, they're kind of new with their working dogs. And I see the struggle with they have to decide, okay, what school of thought am I going to follow? Am I going to follow the school of thought of I'm going to do, a lot of motivational clicker obedience early on? Or am I going to just kind of let the dog be a dog and then kind of figure that out as the dog develops the drive? So it's something that is very, very dividing when it comes to that perspective. And
It's.
yeah, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, and to my experience, I truly believe that because I've seen both products, I truly believe that you could be successful with both approaches. But it does ultimately what's going to be the determining factor is not going to be whether it's not going to be the approach. The determining factor is going to be your level of skill and and the people that you surround yourself with. So
Yeah,
like if
definitely.
you came to my club and you told me, Will, I'm gonna do not a whole lot of obedience. I want to do a lot of drive development, and then I'll tell you, hey, you know what? I'm on board. We can do it that way, and then when as the dog starts to get really powerful, really strong, I will show you and I will help you how to get that way. And if you were to tell me, hey, Will, I want to start with motivational obedience, target training, clicker training, shaping right away, I will be like, definitely 100% on board, and we can help you be successful with both approaches. My personal belief is I like to do the obedience early on, but that's my personal belief. But
Right.
anyway, go on. You were saying something.
So, like, what gets confusing about it, especially being so new, is so what my understanding has been for quite for the small time that I've been involved in this now is like the obedience I have been doing the obedience with my dog as the source of food. You know what I mean? So as
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeding her during the recalls and rewarding her, paying her that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's eating consistently out of my hand during the training. So that's what I use the OB for.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at it like the OB and then the bite work is completely separate to where the
Yeah.
OB is you're obviously food motivating them, but
Mm-hmm.
the bite work you're not motivate. You don't have to theoretically you know what I mean. You want them to
Mm-hmm.
just hop out and go and get ready just to bite, but or want to bite.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, those seem like two different things. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense when people tell me initially like, no, don't do this because it'll stunt the bite work. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and again, take a lot of this with a grain of salt because of my lack of experience, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a little bit of patience kind of almost it debunks that theory to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean patience as in like, hey, it's going to take months or so to maybe correct a mistake. No, I mean maybe patience as far as, hey, it might take 30 seconds to get this dog fired up and going as opposed to this dog fired up just immediately out of the kennel. And
Yeah.
so with that, the flip side, and I'm sure you've seen this before too, is I've seen those dogs to where they are so prey driven and their drive is just through the roof that the obedience is kind of, I don't want to say lacking, but like the dog's drive just wasn't capped at some point, and so
Mm-hmm.
now it's like the dog wants to be the alpha, which we know most of them can't, want to do theoretically, but
Mm-hmm.
you see difference in these dogs to where um it's too much, like you have to
Yeah.
dial it back, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So from my experience, because I've seen this too, from my experience, the older school obedience approach, the older school obedience approach was pressure, very pressure oriented. It was like to teach the dog to sit, to teach the dog to down, to teach the dog to do this, this, and that. It was pressure, pressure, pressure. And that's been the case until fairly recently. Maybe like the last 20 years, 15 years or so, that's when, things started to change and people are more into like, the motivational approach on obedience. Things definitely started to take a slightly different turn with how we primarily do obedience. Now, a lot of people still to this day use pressure for obedience. Now, whether you want to call it a myth or a school of thought, where that one of the reasons or one of the places that originated from was from the approach of, if you are going to do obedience and you are going to use pressure and you're going to use a lot of boundaries, then yes, we can definitely see how that could potentially, inhibit some of that drive building, because now the dog is focusing on two things. The dog is going, is it okay to do this? Is it not okay to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, training especially the past 10 years or so, it's definitely changed. The tone for obedience training, especially with competition, has definitely changed, where now obedience is very motivational, especially for competition dogs. Just like you said, you're going to earn your food. So the dog is now super motivated to learn to do things, and they love the learning process. Whereas that's not as much of a, doing that type of obedience is not necessarily going to cap or deter or inhibit the drive. It might make the dog think about you a little bit more, which can be kind of a pain when you're doing bite work,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that you can overcome very easily. What I have seen, just like you noticed though, this is something I have noticed in, with some trainers, with some dogs, is they do tons of drive building, very little obedience, very little boundaries. They don't even believe in teaching the out until later. And they create this just dog that has no inhibition, super, super powerful, which is great. We want to see that.
Yeah.
But then they go, okay, now we got to teach you some boundaries. And this dog for like months,
Yeah, it's like
if not over a year, it's never ever had to do that.
Yeah.
Like they've always choked it off, or they've given it the reward. It's never ever had to think about how to maintain the game, how to make it so that the game is equally fun, but with now more rules and more boundaries. Now they introduce the concept of, hey, now that you've been winning all along, now you have to learn how to lose. And that gets very conflicted in the dog. And I've seen what that conflict does. Because now you have a dog that really, really wants to bite. And if it's a powerful dog, you introduce that conflict of, hey, now you have to let it go. Now you have to lose.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go through with it. But then you're going to have issues like, unreliability. Or you're going to have to get incredibly heavy-handed. Like unfair, like borderline inhumane.
Yeah.
If not flat out inhumane, because you've never introduced this concept to the dog until he was already very powerful.
Yeah, it's like a rebellious teenager at that point. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like I've never, the dog has never had to, restrain himself. He's never had to think about letting it go. And now I'm going to ask you to do it. You don't even know how to do it, but we're going to tell you through a lot of pressure. So it's just better, I think, to go, hey, we're going to teach you that part of the game, when you're very young, part of the game, not the end of the game, but part of the game is to pause. Part of the game is to momentarily let it go so you can get it back again. Mm-hmm. Versus later on, we tell the dog, now you have to lose.
Yeah.
Now you have to give it up. And you see so much conflict there. And I've seen that. And obviously, you have seen it too.
Yeah, you see the dogs. You see the dog wants to start self-rewarding at that point. And,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And you have to call it off on the bite. and at that point, on the way back to the heel, it might, want to fight that, and and I've seen a few, just a little conflict there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
I'm
comes
going to
from
clarify. Yeah,
crazy drive.
go on. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just said that just comes from a crazy, crazy drive. But, the theory behind it is every dog trainer wants that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have so many. I mean, I've watched the videos of Michael Ellis and these guys that'll tell you, oh, no, they don't really worry about that, and so on. But come on, at the end of the day, like every dog trainer that's going to train a working dog, you want that drive. You will deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're willing to try to conquer that. That beast.
And so what I wanted to do too is, because I know we've talked about conflict, and even though you're a new working dog owner, you've had dogs in the past. You obviously have done your research. A lot of people that get their working dog for the first time and they've only had their working dog for a few months, they don't even know who Michael Ellis is or who Ivan Balabano or Bart Bellon are, unless somebody else has told them. You clearly are willing to do the research. So the term conflict is probably something you're familiar with. So what I want to do real quick is I just want to take a moment to clarify maybe to some of the audience what conflict is. So what conflict is when two desires collide. So two desires that are not compatible with each other collide. And conflict in this scenario that we're talking about with the bite and the out, for instance, conflict is when the dog really wants to bite. It has this desire to bite, and it really wants it. It gets to the bite, and it's super, super enthusiastic and has a high desire to keep biting it. But it also has a desire to avoid pressure. So what happens is when you start using a lot of pressure to teach the dog to out in a very high drive state, what happens is now you introduce conflict. You basically have the dog that goes, I really want to do that. I really want to bite, but man, I don't like what happens after that. And so you have these two very conflicted desires where the dog goes, man, I really want that, but I don't want that. And one I've seen that's a very common one. A lot of sports people will understand this. Conflict is going to happen at some point. Conflict is going to happen, even if you don't use a ton of pressure. The fact that you're introducing some different rules here and there, it kind of makes the dog go, wait a minute, I don't understand this. What do you mean that this has to be slightly different? And even if it's for a brief moment, you can see sometimes develop some conflict. So I'll give you an example. One very common way in which sometimes you see conflict, if you do sports, if you do protection training, this is kind of common. You'll teach the dog to go for the bite, but then you start to teach the dog a call off, which a call off is, hey, go for the bite until I tell you to come back to me. So the dog could be mid sprint, like full throttle to the decoy, and then suddenly you tell the dog, hey, come back.
Yeah.
Now the dog has to hit the brakes, go, dang it, I really wanted to take that. I really wanted to bite. And so now the dog comes back. And even if this is done motivational, because, I've done this motivational with my dog. And, and even if it's through motivation, sometimes you'll see the dog get a little bit confused from him, where you'll tell him, all right, now go ahead and go bite. And the dog goes, I really want to do that. But then they go, but I thought you called me back the last time I did that. So like you see their desire to go, like they have this desire to go. But at the same time, this other voice in their head comes in and goes, hey, remember the last time you did that? You were not allowed to do that.
Yeah, this could be a trap.
And that's kind of what conflict is when two ideas, two desires just kind of collide and make the dog a little bit, maybe confused. Maybe that's what we call a conflict. The dog is conflicted with its desires. And so sometimes you see that, not sometimes, you definitely see it a lot when the dog is being taught to out with a lot of pressure in a very high state of arousal. Because then what happens is the dog really wants to bite. It's enjoying the bite. But as it's enjoying the bite, it remembers what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you see them turning. That's when they see them whining a little bit more. All kinds of things. Because even though they're enjoying it, they also remember what happens right about now. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that in a little bit of detail for some of the listeners that may or may not know what conflict is. But so yeah, I can definitely tell you've done your research. You've seen some of the training sessions, whether through video or in person. What are some of the questions that you have that maybe through research you still have not been able to maybe get a clear answer on? If you get too many answers that you don't know which approach to take, what are some of the things that I can help you clarify?
Some of the biggest questions I have are simply like what kind of bite work training and things like that techniques would you recommend for myself doing with my dog by myself,
Yeah.
And I was watching yours, and he posted a video. I think it was yesterday.
Yours from Quadrant Canine.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And I was watching this, and he was, working bite work with a dog by himself, and he had the lead around, a big palm tree, I think it was, and he was allowing himself to give, the slack for the dog, and then he had the jute sleeve on, and the dog was biting him. And so obviously he's training that dog, that was not going to be his personal dog. But one of the biggest questions that I had was, obviously it's like, well, can I do something like that to where my dog will bite, but it's biting me? But then you also have that conflict of like, well, I don't think you really want your dog biting, you. And then so I kind of looked into that, and the majority had said that it is possible, but it's not recommended. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And even for someone like myself who has no experience, it's probably not a good idea to try or attempt to do. So I'm like, yeah, I rule that out.
I'm kind of glad that we're touching on this too, because this is another huge question where a lot of dog trainers are very divided.
Yeah.
So I will explain that. I'll explain the different schools of thought on that. So there's this very common, very popular belief that you should never, under any circumstances, do your own bite work with your dog. And here is where that comes from, okay? If I'm going to train... So let's talk a little bit about bite work and break down its basic components. And I'll make an analogy for this. Imagine bite work as fighting, okay? Because fighting is a very broad term, but bite work is kind of a broad term too. So I'll make an analogy to fighting. Let's say you have your child, and you want your child to be a good fighter, right?
Sure.
So you want your child to be a good fighter. There are people that will tell you, hey, you should never fight your child, because you don't want your child to kick your ass, and then then they lose respect for you, and they get the idea that
you're no longer the man of the house.
Exactly, right? But you're also going to have people that will tell you, hey, no, hold on, because fighting can be divided into a couple of different components. There is technique, and then there is dealing with stressful situations, right? Dealing with conflict, dealing with de-escalating conflict, right? So those are two different skills. So I could take that and go, my child is going to learn how to be a fighter. I don't have to wait for a boxing instructor or a boxing gym to open up for me to send my child to that, especially if I don't have a lot of access to that.
Right.
But here's what I can do with my child. I can teach him technique. I can teach him what a jab is. I can teach him what a cross is. I can teach him what a hook is. I can teach him what an uppercut is. I can teach him what a block is. I can teach him the footwork. And, I can put the pats on, right? I can put the pats on my palms. Mm-hmm. And I can have my son practice his jab cross, right? His jab cross hook, his jab cross uppercut. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to slap my son around. I'm not going to go, hey, let's learn how to fight it, and I'm going to start beating his ass, because then we are going to have problems, right?
Yeah. It's not the same as just sparring. Yeah.
Exactly. So if I teach my child, hey, dude, let's do some jabs and some crosses, that doesn't demean the authority figure that I have for my child, because one, the child understands, and I'm making it clear to my child, this is about technique, right? Mm-hmm. It's, you are learning how to strike. You're learning how to do a jab and a hook and a cross. But for that to happen, I should have an idea of what a cross and a jab and an uppercut and a block are. If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not going to teach my child the proper technique.
Right.
So with my dog, with your dog, really in training in general, the big question is, crap, do I do bite work with my own dog? You break bite work into a couple of basic components. One is grip technique, right? Mm-hmm. The other component of bite work is maybe use more serious and more, a little bit what we call more defense-oriented exercises. And if we're talking about defense-oriented exercises, typically those are more pressure-oriented scenarios. With bite work, they're a little bit more serious. Not necessarily, though. And that in itself is an entirely different topic on whether you want to work them in defense a whole lot or not. But to kind of go back to the main topic here, if I'm working a dog on technique, even if it's my own dog, I can work my own dog on technique. I can work my own dog on the proper grip. I can work him on the push grip. I can work him on that, because, I'm teaching him technique and I know what I'm doing. Right. So me doing that for my dog is not going to make my dog bite me, so it doesn't necessarily mean that's what will happen. And some people do believe that, it's a big no-no. It's a bad word. You should never do bite work with your own dog. But if you understand that you can do technique, man, you can do technique. And I'm going to do a little bit of name dropping here. I've talked to Bart Bellon. I've talked to Dave Kroyer. I've talked to other trainers that, again, that have very accomplished, and they also do their own bite work. When I talked to Bart Bellon about this topic, he told me, he was like, Michael has his wife, Michael and I have, we've always worked our own dogs. And Dave Kroyer, same thing. I mean, this is a guy that will definitely work his own dogs and bite work, but they're working on technique. They're not, they're the concept of respect to the owner, to the handler, never goes away, because the dog understands this is mostly like a sparring game for you to understand what technique is. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to get serious and we're going to do defense work, we're definitely not going to do that. That's not something you want to do with your own dog. But there are trainers that are like, hey, even if it's just technique, it should really be with somebody else who knows what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. So ultimately, that's what it comes down to, is that, I'm not qualified to really work it. So the answer to my question is no.
Yes, no, but I can give you some tips too. I can also give you some tips. So one thing, like if you really have no idea what you're doing, and a lot of people are kind of, in the same way. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way that you have no idea what you're doing. Right. What I mean is, in bite work at least, this is something that this is a foreign territory to you. But here are some things that you should not do. And I think part of the, winning the battle is also knowing how not to screw up your dog. Okay, so here are some things that you should not do. This is for you. This is for some of the audience as well. Here are some things that you should not do with your own dog to develop the bite work. One, don't let your dog just gnaw and chew on soft toys, plush toys.
Mm-hmm.
So like, don't let him have his little, his little teddy bear, or
Yeah. None
her
of that.
little squirrel, and just have her gnaw on it, take it to the corner and just gnaw on it. Because when you just let your dog do that, it potentially creates, not necessarily that it will 100%, but it potentially creates some bad habits that could translate to bite work. Like, because that's what bite work is. If I give you a flirt pole, and if you bring me your dog and I work with your dog with a flirt pole, or I work your dog with a puppy sleeve, it's essentially just a soft plush toy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using it to work your dog's grip. So if we're very, very calculated about this process, and then you go home and you give your dog a squeaky squirrel, or a soft teddy bear, and it grabs it and it takes it to its crate and just gnawing on it.
Just rips
It's
the
grabbing
stuffing
it,
out.
thrashing it, shaking it.
Yep.
It's just rehearsing poor gripping behavior. So one thing that you should never ever do, especially if you don't know a whole lot about how to develop your dog's bite work, and you just have to rely on a decoy, is do not let your dog just chew on soft toys, because they could potentially rehearse poor gripping behavior. And as far as other things that you could do for bite work that could benefit your dog for bite work, is teach your dog the concept of trading. Okay, so what I mean by that is, for instance, you could
Having two toys.
two toys, exactly, two ball it, and you trade one toy for the other, or you give him a ball and then you trade the ball after he plays with it for a few seconds. You have some food, you put it right in front of its nose, and let it know, hey, if you drop this, you get the food. And so introducing your dog to the concept of trading, and the concept of trading doesn't mean that you lose. It's still part of the game. You still get to win. It really sets the tone for later when you have to do some outs. And you do it without, you don't even have to say out, because they don't even know what out is. Like, the word itself, they don't even know what it is. But if you at least introduce the concept of trading, I'm telling you, that really can set you up, in the right foot as your dog progresses in bite work. So I think if you do those two things that, you can definitely do, that will help you out. That will help your dog out, and your decoy will thank you.
Yeah.
That way you're not having to put all of that on the decoy. So no, that's a really good question. Was there anything else that you had?
Oh yeah. So again, there might not be like two widely varying philosophies on this, but one question that I do have, and I guess the answer could be subjective based upon, do you have a working dog or do you have a sport dog? Like, how intense, how serious is it? But in your opinion, for a dog like myself, for a dog like mine, what is an adequate or enough time, or is there any time allowed for the dog outside of its kennel? Obviously, I'm not saying just unsupervised, but with our other two dogs, maybe allowed to have some social interaction with those two. I feel like I did a pretty good job with her and our two labs, because there was never any conflict with any three of them at all. And because we have a male and a female, and all three of them get along fine. So, I mean,
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with that. Definitely.
I've been told by so many that it's like, no rec time, no nothing. It's like the dog is either working, training with you, And if it's not training or, you know, outside using the restroom, then it's back in the kennel. And I do, dude, I agree 100% with that. These dogs have to be kenneled, and I do, but I'm still kind of on the fence about, well, do they have to be kenneled 100% of the time? Is there not a way to incorporate that in some way of having some kind of rec time with interaction with the family and the other dogs in a supervised, you know, environment and whatnot? Because we have some property too. And, you know, I had reached out to one of someone else, you know, and just for some advice and just saying, hey, do you think it would be all right if I took my dog over here, you know, to our land, and while I'm there, just kind of give her an opportunity just to kind of run. You know what I mean? It's 10 acres or whatnot, and we have a little ATV, and the labs, they go nuts. They like to run with that thing, and they'll run the whole property. You know what I mean? And just to give her an opportunity just to kind of run and play with other dogs, you know, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And it was like, no, absolutely not. No, no, you're crazy for even asking. So it was like, you know, okay. But then here's the thing. If you rely on online content and whatnot, and if you go through Instagram and you follow all these pages and you're looking at all these people that are still training their dogs and their dogs look all so happy, and then you see them in their beds and you see them like running the house and just kind of having, and it's like, hold up, wait.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Like, is there a balance? Is there a true balance for someone like me, or is there just better off saying no? And think that if the ones that say no, is it almost like telling me no only because I'm not yet experienced maybe to do that yet? Is it more or less me, or is it just that philosophy that some people have that there's just no time like that available?
You know, that is another excellent question, because this is also a matter of school of thought. You know, we touched on this a little bit yesterday when we were talking on the phone, where, you know, there are different views, different methodologies in dog training, and it's almost religious. Like, you know, some people are like, it's got to be this way, and some people are like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It has to be this way. And that kind of goes back to that. You know, I think that's a reoccurring theme in our conversation so far. Tonight, it's, well, you know, there are two different schools of thought, and I've seen all of them. I've seen them, and I can tell you the different product that those bring up, and I can tell you where it originates from. So there is some logic to that. Okay, here's the logic to that, and it makes sense, honestly. What these people are telling you when they're telling, hey, you know, keep the dog in the crate most of the time. Here is where it comes from, and there's logic behind it. Once I explain it to you, it's going to make a lot of sense. And that's the thing. I think that the problem is you've been told some things that are really good, but they haven't really told you the logic behind it. So you're like, I don't get it. So I'm going to tell you.
Before you say that, now I'm going to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Keep in mind that, as far as I do understand the logic as far as why that they're kenneled. So, but my confusion is, or my question is like, and I feel like I've done a very good job with mine on the kennel. You know, she stays in there, and she hasn't been given any of that extra time out. Like, she hasn't. I've been very strict on that, and I'm wondering, could I be, you know, a little bit better about that? But my question is not necessarily why does she have to say kenneled. My question is there a middle ground between having them, you know, whether it's 10, 20 minutes a day or whatnot of having that little social time with
Yeah,
family and the other dogs?
I will definitely answer that question for sure. But I do want to go over the logic a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
That
Go
way,
ahead.
again, it for some of the listeners, they're like, okay, what's the reason behind it? Because a lot of people do hear this. So the logic behind it is, if your dog gets to run around and be a member of your family, and it gets to be your fur child, what happens is, during that time that your dog is out and about and hanging out with you and taking naps with you,
Mhm.
and sniffing the dogs and running around your yard, and doing this and that, what happens is your dog gets to experience spikes of of happy moments, spikes of happy chemicals. They Your dog gets to experience dopamine
Mhm.
in different parts of the day, and now training becomes another fun part of the day. But now the dog has more options. Like, yeah, training with you is fun, Dad, but smelling Fido's piss is also fun.
Right.
Like laying on your bed and and tearing up your pillow, that's also fun.
Yeah.
So the logic behind keeping the dog in the crate, primarily your working dog, primarily in the crate, is we want them to experience those high moments of arousal and excitement and dopamine only while you're training. So once training, whether it's with Bitework or with you, once that is over, they get to digest it, sleep on it, and dream about it in their crate. And then the reason why people will tell you leave them in the crate is because the logic is, if you keep them in the crate, now they're looking forward to the next training session, because when they come out of the crate, their rec time is training session. The
Mhm.
recreation time is the Bitework. The recreation time is spending time with with learning the foos, the plus, the sits, all of that. And so then they go, oh man, I gotta go back in my crate. And now they're like, oh man, I can't wait to come out and train. And that makes them really enthusiastic about training. Whereas your fur child goes, yeah, Dad, I love to train. I love to spend time, learning the foos and the plots and the sits and the Bitework. But I also really like tearing up your pillow. I also like, tearing up the flowers. I also like sniffing the critters and tracking the deer out in the yard. So that's kind of the logic behind it. Now, what you've been told, and your concern. So what you've been told to me makes sense. I've heard this a lot with working dogs,
Mhm.
but also what you see. Like you follow some trainers, you follow some accounts, and you see exactly what you told me, and I see the same thing too. I see these people that do compete. They do, they do even compete at a high level, but you see them going on hikes with their dogs. You see them, doing
Yeah.
things with their dogs. And so it makes you go, well, what the hell? I mean, is this wrong? Is that right? What's going on here?
Yeah. Why can't
And
I walk my dog? Yeah.
exactly. So the other school of thought is, and again, I know people, two of my instructors, I've had a bunch of mentors in my career, and two of them were very, I don't mind if my dog comes out and goes for a hike and goes walking around with me. And I mean, these are people that I respect. These are people that, I look up to. And they gave me that different perspective. Like, no, you should do things with your dog. It should be fun for your dog to do this and that. And they also compete in worlds. So they're not just, your average dog trainer down the road. These
Mhm.
are people that are very competitive too. And the school of thought behind that is, uh, your dog should have the chance to be a dog, and really it's your responsibility to be good enough to be more interesting than dirt. And that was the
Mhm.
saying that they had. Yeah, I know your dog wants to, smell and be a dog and go for a walk, but in training it is your job to be more engaging and more important than dirt. And now that responsibility falls on you, right? The school of thought of that is let your dog be a dog. The responsibility, they put that on you. Whereas, hey, keep your dog in the crate 24 hours a day. And I'm exaggerating, obviously. Keep your dog in the crate 24 hours a day so that it only comes out, so that it only trains and only eats when it trains. That's putting the responsibility on the dog. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So there are two different approaches. And one, we're going to tell you, dude, you need to be a better trainer. You need to be a better dog owner. The other one is, hey, do everything you can to make it so that your dog is obsessed with training. And in my personal opinion, I'm very, I'm not for one or the other. I actually like them both because I have working dogs, and I do like a combination of those. Like I have my working dog. My wife has her working dog, and she had a working dog that recently passed away. Different story, but we both had our working dogs, and my working dog is primarily a working dog. Like if you're in the crate, but you're out for like either to do bite work, to do obedience, to train, to eat, but I also do other things with that dog. I do go for walks with him. I do let him run around and be a dog. I do let him, do stupid shit and, be a dog. So he's not like my fur child. He's not like sleeping on the couch with me. He's not, laying on his bed with my shoes. He's not doing any of that stuff. So he's primarily my crate and trained dog, but he also, a few times a day, he does have his recreational time. He does, get to, sniff and say hi to the other dogs and hang out for a little bit. And that's what I do. My wife did the same thing where, her dog was primarily a crate and trained dog, but that dog was also out and about. That dog also spent time inside the house. It wasn't a lot, but we both, do embrace that, where we have that nice balance of, hey, you can be a dog. You can do you can do this stupid stuff. You can roll in the grass. You can go say hi to the other dog. Still within boundaries, still, in a very reasonable manner where you're not getting out of hand.
Right.
But
always in a controlled.
Exactly. So my advice to you, not only based on my experience, my experience can only go so far, but based on the people that I look up to that have accomplished 100 times the trainer that I am and have accomplished way more than I have, they have the same philosophy as I do, which is, hey, you can let your dog be a dog. And they have the accomplishments to back it up.
Yeah.
So
to you, earn everything.
Exactly. So to you, I would say, it is okay to have your dog have some rec time. Have your dogs have some some recess time with. She does get to hang out for a little bit. She does get to be a dog. She does get to go on your property, hang out for a little bit. But then, go, all right, dude, once rec time is over, you're going to go rest, and then we're going to train. And the other thing, too, the other thing that I like about the crate and train philosophy, the one thing that I do like about the crate and train philosophy, is when you adopt that crate and train philosophy, it actually forces you to train more.
Right.
Because you're thinking, well, shit, this dog's been in the crate for a long time. I got to take her out.
Yeah, I got to do something.
But if I take her out, I got to train. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That is a really good thing about the crate and train philosophy is it makes you train your dog more often. Whereas if your dog is just a fur child, it's easy to go, he's been out for a while. I don't really need to train. I could maybe do one training session a day, and he's probably going to be all right because he's been out all day.
Yeah.
Whereas crate and train, you got to train your dog. If your dog's got to come out, so that means you got to give your dog several training sessions per day. So that is one really good thing about the crate and train philosophy. But yeah, that's how it is. I mean, I
It,
would say, dude, don't feel bad. Take your dog out, let her be a dog, and just feel it out. Play it
mhm.
out, see what you prefer to, what works for you.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think everybody kind of agrees for the most part that you kind of have to earn it, and I completely understand that too, and it's one of those questions that, like, if you're at club and you're a new dog owner and you ask that, that's when everybody kind of looks at you like, oh, here we go. And almost assume, like, do I really have to kennel my dog? And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm clear on the kennel part, like, but I'm just not clear on the 100%. Like, I was even asking, like, 5 or 10 minutes, and I was told at some point, like, no,
Yeah,
at zero. So I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay, all right, I get it.
yeah.
I get it. And I didn't really necessarily know if it was the answer was more or less me, you know what I mean, or the dog.
And part of it might have been that too. Part of it might have been sometimes, and this is my perspective, as an instructor, and when I have my club members, if I have somebody who's very new, with dog training, somebody who's very new with their first dog, and they tell me, hey, well, what should I do? Should I do this? Sometimes the easiest answer to give them is definite answers.
Yeah, the
Like if
cold
they're
hard
brand new,
truth. Yeah.
so that would be like my only, that would be like the only thing that maybe I think that was their point, is to
Mhm.
go, what, if we tell them, yeah, 5 minutes here and there, 5 minutes here and there can turn easily into half an hour here and there, an hour here and there.
Right.
Not necessarily because it's you as yourself, but in general,
Yeah,
sometimes people don't abide by those little, oh yeah, 5 minutes here and there, and it's just easier to go, no, nope.
yeah, that's true. And it's different with all of the trainers.
Mm-hmm.
I guess trainer to trainer, and you have you have the difference in the personalities. And so my preference is the cold hard truth to the matter.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer to that question is you know has a lot to do with my inexperience, then hey, at that point it's like at some point you can get there, but just not right now. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. One thing that I have noticed with some of these dog trainers, and it's I don't know if it's the correct terminology, but more commercialized kind of
Mm-hmm.
trainers is you see they have this persona, or they this bravado or in
Mm-hmm.
some way, but you can kind of almost assume, and it might be a reasonable assumption, that they treat people the same way that they do dogs, almost. And
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is when you train a dog, you don't have to explain there is no why. You don't
Yeah.
have to. The dogs don't have to know the why.
Yeah.
But if you're training a person, a human being, to train a dog, they have to know the why.
Yeah.
So if you're so used to training and not knowing and not having to train the why, well, then having to do that is different. And they
Yeah.
don't, and some of them don't want to do that. That's out of their style. That's out of their realm. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And two, I've a lot of people who stick to animals. Sometimes I say a lot have like kind of unique personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe socially awkward, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But they just
Yeah.
relate, and they're far more comfortable with animals because there's no why. There's no
Yeah.
details.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common things, as an instructor for dog trainers, one of the one of the more common things that I hear a lot from people, who want to be dog trainers is when they explain why they want to work with dogs. A
Mhm.
very common answer is it's because I don't like people.
Yeah.
It's because, I don't do well with people and I like animals and that's why I want to work with animals. But the one thing we always tell them is you picked the wrong career then. Because if you're going to
Mhm.
work with dogs, guess what you're going to work with? You're going to be working with people.
Yeah.
And that is a skill. That truly is a skill. I've known and I've worked with amazing dog trainers. Freaking awesome, super, super good dog trainers
Mhm.
that did not have the proper people skills.
Right. So here's the thing. To to go back to a main point, dude. That is very important when it comes to anybody in my situation being new. And if you're looking to join a club, if you're looking to find an actual trainer for private lessons or for what, like don't go and look and choose a trainer because you feel like, oh, he's the best for with the dogs, or you
Mm-hmm.
like the dogs the best, or because his training technique or their training her technique is what you prefer or whatnot. Like, actually think about the situation. If you're in a board and train at that point, it doesn't really matter all that much,
Mm-hmm.
except for towards the end, and if you have questions and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking to do this yourself, you've got to pick the right trainer that has the correct and adequate people skills and that
Yeah.
are willing to teach you the why
Oh yeah.
and go through the details,
Yeah.
because you always hear that this is what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
really, that's them telling you that this is how I do it and this is how I want to do it, and I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you
Oh
hear
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, find the trainer, man, that will communicate with you and that understands your needs
Yeah.
and whatnot. Because there's a huge difference, man. There's a huge difference between getting a dog and then trying to find a trainer to train your dog, and then getting a dog and then trying to find a trainer that will train or teach you to train your dog. And I
Mm-hmm.
made the decision to train my dog myself, meaning that I
Mm-hmm.
got to learn this. So my dog
Mm-hmm.
is only going to go as far as I go. So it's up to
Mm-hmm.
me. So if she's lagging, then it's me. And so
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, like another like another part or aspect of it that that is very polarizing, and it's, man, is like after a couple of months, William, look, dude, I'll be honest with you, like I got attached to the dog. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sport dog, working dog. I don't give a shit. That's my dog. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love that dog. I'm attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, like, I'm capable of maintaining a barrier. You know what I mean? When I know I need to. For instance, we have labs, and a couple months ago, 6 months ago or whatnot, the female had puppies. Well, I didn't get attached to any of the puppies because I knew they were going. So I'm capable of that, but like what I'm getting at is I see some people with their relationships that's like, well, it's a working dog.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, okay, it is a working dog, but damn, stop acting like you don't love the dog, like it's
Yeah.
still not important to you. But the thing is, man, with me, I got the dog and I got attached to it, yes, but I made the decision to do this with this dog. So
Yeah.
I took this dog and I made the conscious decision to take this dog at 6 months with, unfortunately, with the bad habits that were already installed in the puppy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So now, did I know about all that? No, but I guess that's kind of irrelevant. But so my point is that where in a lot of other situations where I've heard it, where trainers will be like, we'll just, all right, we'll flip the dog, basically trade it and just go get you a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
just start over. That's a quick fix. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
first off, no. Okay,
Right.
there's one, I am attached to the dog, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but two, I set my mind to it to do this with this dog.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not fair to just even consider like dumping the dog. And then the other thing too is like maybe some of the habits or whatnot and things like I have bad habits too, and my lack of experience might contribute to some of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So okay, let's just say I was that kind and was willing to just cut ties with the dog and send it back or whatnot and then go get a mail. Well, who's to say that I am not going to do some of the same things with that mail and end up in the same situation?
Yeah. Exactly. That's a good
You know
point.
what I mean?
That's a
So
very good point.
you know, man, it's just there's so much that goes into it, and
And it's really good. I'm glad we had this conversation because one, I'm very happy to help you and answer your questions. Two, the topics that we touched on tonight,
Mhm.
these are questions that I've heard before,
Oh
and
yeah,
and I know like this is being new at with working dogs is something that a lot of people go through. And
hmm
this is also good for the trainers to listen to. If you're a dog trainer, you have to understand from the perspective of a client, like you, dog
hmm
trainers need to understand that it's not just about what you know, it's about how you convey it. It's about how you explain it. It's about how you
yeah,
teach it and about how you talk to that person. If you can't reach the owner, you can't reach the dog.
right.
It
The
has to make sense to the owner.
the human has to the person has to know the why. You have
Mm-hmm.
to understand what it is you're doing and why for you to reinforce it and actually support it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. But here's the thing, man. I've met one particular trainer, a younger guy. He lives, like an hour and away, hour and a half or so away from me. But like I don't know what you would call it. Maybe unorthodox or just kind of more laid back.
Mm-hmm.
He's he's kind of the complete opposite of what you see in a lot of other trainers.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Like he's getting results out of his dogs, and I've been seeing, and he came by and he worked with mine for a little bit, and really I saw a lot of positive things. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
he is one that is proving to me again with my limited experience that the phrase is true. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you just gotta you just you gotta figure it out on the way, like what fits best for you and your dog. I think
Definitely.
any advice for anybody in my situation, like with me, as far as if you are resorting to online content, um, people like Michael Ellis, Ivan, um, the training without conflict, those probably fit better for somebody like me, because if you don't know, you don't want to be put in a position to be too dangerous. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
Michael Ellis has like a really um, subtle kind of approach, I guess, to training from what I've noticed, and
Mm-hmm.
how he approaches these dogs and such, and it's very drastically different. You can tell from if you go watch, say, like Nino.
Mm-hmm.
What's his last name? Dwart or
Yeah.
yeah,
Drawer heard something. I don't
yeah.
remember.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
something.
know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you can see a drastic difference in styles and
Oh
what
yeah.
between the two, and probably how they train, and also too probably how they deal with people. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, just I would probably gravitate more to like Michael Ellis's style than I would Nino's
Mm-hmm.
personally, but maybe other people wouldn't. Somebody else might see the speed in this dog spinning and running at such a young age and think like, well, that's what I want to do, and then that might appeal to them, and they might prefer somebody like Nino style, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
Mm-hmm.
um, you just got to kind of figure it out, man, and pick a style and go with it, and then once you get then you can kind of pick little things and little details and techniques or whatnot from other people's style and kind of create your own and go from there. But
That is definitely. I mean,
yeah,
you're touching on a very good point, on a very good, an excellent problem, I guess, that a lot of people have is. I was having this conversation with Jerry Bradshaw. He has a really awesome podcast. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jerry Bradshaw. He was one of the
yeah,
founders of PSA.
mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we were talking about is I notice it. He notices because we've talked about this in the past too. Is when because there are different ways to skin a cat, because there are different approaches that you can take to dog training. One of the problems that come with the different ways to train dogs is people will bounce from this technique to that technique to that technique, and then they'll try to just merge them all. Which, if you don't have a grasp on the basic
Fundamentals, man.
understanding, of dog training, it can be very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be an expert dog trainer. You don't have to be this amazing dog trainer to have a well trained dog. You can have that by following a system and being consistent with that system. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
versus going, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that, or I think I want to try that. So just like you said, to you feel like you can relate a little bit better with Michael Ellis's style. To somebody else, somebody might relate a little bit better, with maybe Nino style,
Mm-hmm.
or Ivan style, or Bart Bellon's, his system. So
Well, yeah, and let me say this: I've actually never really seen Nino's style, or like training or anything. I just kind of see
mhm,
his content and stuff, like what he posts, with his dogs and his puppies, and he's all about like the real quick and the speed and that
flashy,
stuff, which
yeah,
real flashy kind of, and that's cool, that's great and all, but like with what I'm looking to do and accomplish, that doesn't it doesn't really serve. I don't want to say serve a purpose, but it's not. It's just not what I'm looking for right now. Maybe years down the road when I let me learn to crawl first. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Before I start trying to turn mouths into little Ferraris or whatnot. Trying to,
right, right.
it's got appeal, dude. It really does. It's got a commercial appeal to it, and it's cool. I just not yet, man. Not for me yet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Uh,
you've only had this stuff for a few months.
yeah. So, you know, things like that. The other questions like I have is like I I've learned that everything with these dogs should be intentional. You know what I mean? And you really got to pay attention to everything, much like you would a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
But I start to wonder about putting emphasis on things with the dogs and then putting too much. Like I wonder, like, see, I in my job, I can go to the office and work every day, or I can work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to have a balance of that. So generally, I might go to the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then work from home Thursday, Friday. But I always take her with me to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so the interaction, say from, and just the little things, just say from when I'm parking my truck and I'm getting her out and I'm walking her through the parking lot into the building and up the stairs and then down to my office, like with not doing tons of OB, I get her on the leash and she pulls me everywhere.
Yeah.
And the natural reaction is to, like, I want to stop and pull back and then correct that, but then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, don't correct that because I don't want to stunt the bite work. So basically what everybody at my office has seen for the last 3 months when I come to work is this damn dog that's basically just working my ass and just pulling me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, straight to my office. And I'm like trying to train this dog and people are looking at it like, really? Okay. All right. Good job. Good luck with that. And it's like, So
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, is that common? Would you tell somebody in my situation that, like, yeah, just let the dog pull, or would you say, no, let's try to, correct that with obedience? Or is it subjective and very just kind of not an easy question to answer?
To me, it's a very easy question to answer.
Okay.
And I know people have their different styles on that. But to me, here's how I solve that problem. What I do is my dogs have got to know two sets of obedience.
Mm-hmm.
One is formal, the other one is going to be informal. So, just to give you an example, when my dog was a puppy, I let him pull everywhere. Like he was pulling me, and the concept, the idea behind that was, I want to make sure that you kind of what we talked about earlier. I'm gonna do some obedience, but it's gonna be very motivational, and I'm not gonna put a whole lot of pressure until you're a little bit older. So when he was about 6 months of age, that's when I was like, okay, dude, we're gonna start to introduce some boundaries. I tell my wife to do the same thing. She's doing the same. She did the same thing with her other dog. This little dog she's working with, she's doing the same thing, and it works great. And I didn't. It's not my idea. This is something that I got from other trainers too, which is, look, you're gonna learn competition obedience, and you're gonna learn, informal or practical obedience. So my dog Rust, there's no way he's gonna pull me. There's no way. He's a big dog. We stopped that a long time ago when he was about 6, 7 months of age. And I did use pressure, but here's how I did this beautiful compromise that didn't affect his obedience at all, which was, hey, dude, when I have you on my right side, on the right side of my body, you're not gonna pull. You are gonna get corrected if you get out of control. If you get very inappropriate, there are going to be some corrections. I'm going to get you to understand that being on the right side is rewarding, but basically there's not going to be any pulling, right? Mm-hmm. There are going to be some boundaries here on the right side. On the left side, that's my foo side, right? That's my competition side. On that, it's going to be nothing but power and reward, right? And accuracy.
Yeah.
So if I tell you, sits, that means keep your butt on the ground. And I've done this through motivation too. So it's not like I'm not just doing this through, hammer and using tons of pressure. Like I let the dog know if I say sits, that means your butt's on the ground and you don't move your butt until I say free. It doesn't matter where I go, for how long I leave you there. If I say sits, you're gonna keep your butt on the ground. And this is not something I do out and about. This is something I only do in the trial field or when I'm training for competition. But if I wanted to make it more practical, less formal, my informal would be, I tell him, hang on. So hang on to him means wait. I don't care if you're sitting. I don't care if you're laying down. Just wait right there. Right? I don't care if you're standing. If I say hang on, he knows hang on means don't move until I come back. But I don't care if it's accurate. I don't care if it looks beautiful. I don't care if it's got speed behind it. And my dog has made that connection. He knows if you're on the right side, it doesn't have to look pretty. Just don't pull me.
Mm-hmm.
If I put you on my left, it has to look pretty. If I tell you sits, it has to be fast. It has to be pretty. If I tell you hang on, that means we're not competing. We're not training. I just want you to stay there for a minute until I come back or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have formal and informal. If I tell you, let's go, that means come to me. That's my informal command to come back to me. If I do a whistle or a hia or a foos, that's my competition recall. I want you to come back fast. I want it to look pretty, and I want it to be accurate. So I have 2 sets of commands for everything I do, and that way there's no confusion. Because when there is confusion is when you tell the dog foos, but then foos means 2 different things. It means keep your head up, but it also means, hey, don't pull me when we go from the parking lot to the building. You know, like I don't want any gray areas. It has to be black and white. And for me to have that nice compromise, my suggestion to you, and suggestion that I have for every client I work with, my club members, and I practice this myself, is we're going to have a set of practical commands, informal commands, and we're going to have a list of very formal competition commands. And the dog learns. They definitely learn to discriminate that, and they learn to differentiate it, and no issues happen because of it.
Yeah, you have one your commands for a more relaxed environment, and you have your commands for when it's time to go to work.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would incorporate that into your routine with your dog, and trust me, it will not affect your competition obedience. Won't affect your bite work. The dogs are sometimes. I feel what happens is, in general, dog trainers, dog owners, sometimes we don't give the dog enough credit. We think that these are just these dumb animals that, you have to do it a certain way because they're dumb. And if you do it any other way, you're going to screw them up. And you'd be surprised how resilient and how smart and how forgiving dogs can be. Where, if you do happen to screw up, dogs will forgive you. They're like, dude, you screwed up. You didn't know what you were doing. I'll figure it out for both of us. And they do. Yeah. They really do.
Yeah, let's move on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think doing an informal, more I don't want to say relaxed obedience necessarily, because it's still got to be obedience. Like if I tell you right, it doesn't have to look pretty, but you got to stay with me, right? But it's more informal. It doesn't have to look pretty.
Right. And so the hard part, like for somebody like myself, is just figuring out how to learn that myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? How to learn that's the thing. And so as we go on, I find myself here like learning little things. Like I'm been just kind of working with her just to try to do a little focus heel. Not like I'm not like putting too much emphasis on it, just kind of spending a few minutes on it, here and there just to see. It's not clean or anything, obviously, but just to try to introduce it, I guess, expose. So I've been doing that, and then just your basic recalls. And she'll sit, she'll down. She doesn't stay, obviously. I mean, she'll sit, but then she'll pop back up. She'll down for, long enough for her to get the food, and then she's ready to get back up. And so I guess with my training of her having to be constantly, I haven't tried to work with any kind of a stay or, you know what I mean? Or anything like that. So I'm sitting here like trying to figure out like, how am I going to put all this together? You know what I mean? How do you, that's where those kind of things is where I guess you could say club really comes into play.
Yeah, and I'll kind of. I told you last night when we were talking, I was gonna point you in the right direction, and I'm gonna narrow it for you. I'm gonna narrow it down for you, and this is gonna sound kind of crappy for maybe some of the trainers we've talked about. But I say this with a lot of respect. I do respect all these guys. Like all the names we've talked about, I highly regard those people. Plus all the mentors that I've had, highly, highly regard them. Like I've watched Ivan Balabanov's Training Without Conflict. I watched some of his other videos. I've watched Michael Ellis' videos. He's an awesome trainer. Bart Bellon has his school, as you know, Nepopo. He has his program. I haven't been to the Nepopo school, but before he started his school, I've watched like every video there is of Bart Bellon giving lectures, talking, teaching. There are a lot of videos of Bart Bellon on the internet, on YouTube, that are not they're not taken by Bart or by his crew or by his wife. They're people that went to seminars, recorded, and they've put clips all throughout the internet of Bart Bellon. So I highly regard Bart Bellon too. But one trainer, and I'm going to give this guy a huge shout out, because not that I feel like this is the best guy out there. He's amazing, certainly amazing in what he does. But this one guy has some really good content, really easy to follow, and that is Dave Kroyer.
Oh, okay,
Dave Kroyer. He's definitely has his own style of training. It's nothing crazy. It makes sense. It's not like Dave Kroyer trademarked this his own particular style. It's nothing like that. He he has this this membership, and there is no discount code. Nothing. I don't get anything out of this. But I do follow him, and I am a member of his like membership website. And man, it's like $10 a month, which is very cheap. And he's got like hundreds of videos in his membership website, and it's like laid out in categories. So if you wanted to look up how to teach a front or a heel, he has like a series on that where he talks about the why, he does the lecture, he does examples, and he tells you exactly how to do it. And you're like, wow, damn, that's a lot on that. But it's by Dave Kroyer. It's one person. Certainly, again, it's one way to do it, but he explains it in operant conditioning terms. If you wanted to look up, okay, how do I train the retrieve? You look up retrieve. He's got a series of videos on how to teach motivational retrieve and force retrieve. So the guy is like a wealth of knowledge. He's got a bunch of experience. He's very accomplished as a trainer, as a competitor, and he's also a Mondial ring judge. He's done a lot in the industry. But the thing that I really like about Dave's setup is, one, it's very affordable. Like you look up, we're talking about Ivan Balabanov, and as much as I respect that guy, and I definitely love his style, just one of his videos alone is like $100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you got that for one topic, and you can pay $10 a month for like hundreds of videos that Dave has. So I feel like Dave is. And I've sent people there too. When people are very, very new, know my experienced trainers, but my members are like, hey, I kind of want to know what to do. I'll send them to Dave Kroyer's membership website because, again, I like the setup that he has on his website.
Yeah, useful tool.
It's useful. It's user friendly. You can pick a category and it tells you all of them, and I'm not saying that, that Dave Kroyer is better than Ivan, or he's better than Bart, or he's better than Jerry Bradshaw, or all these other guys we talked about. But I like that his setup can really help you out and it's like
He's more accessible.
self learning. Like like you can learn as much as you want to by just simply watching those videos, or you can you can just learn a couple of things here and there. Same thing, like but it's on you, and it's one place. You don't have to worry about going on YouTube and go, how do I teach a sit? And then you got like hundreds of videos by like hundreds of different people on how to teach a sit. It can be very confusing of that information overload.
Yeah.
But Dave Kroyer tells you, hey, here is the different ways that I teach it, and here's how I lay it out. Here is why I teach it this way. Dude, like he's definitely one of my biggest resources when it comes to information, and I give him huge props for that. Again, I don't get a cent out of giving him a shout out. This is just purely to let you know that's one place where you can, like a person like you who has very little knowledge but is willing to put in the work, will get a lot out of it.
Yeah. One other person that I've been following that I don't know if he's as well known, but, man, I've been watching all of his videos, man, are really helpful. But the guy articulates really well, and he kind of explains it and dummies it down. Is Justin Rigney? Is that his name? Justin.
I'm not familiar.
I believe he's from
I'm gonna have to look him up.
He's the K9 Services Unlimited, I believe, is his. But yeah, if you don't follow him, man, look him up because he does tons of content. And I watch most of that primarily on Instagram.
Okay, I see, I'm looking him up right now. Justin Rigney.
Yeah, but that guy right there, man, he knows his stuff, but he communicates it, man, very well.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check him out.
But yeah, I've just been just kind of following people similar to that articulates the the technique really well, and,
awesome.
And helps understand it for the most part.
Well, hey man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope I was able to give you some good answers.
Yes, sir.
And I'm very happy that we had this conversation, and we'll definitely get back together again. If you if you want to, if you have any additional questions, just hit me up. I'll help you out.
Yeah, definitely.
And but yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it, and best of luck with your pup. And I know you're definitely heading in the right direction. You're doing your research. You're doing your homework. Clearly, it sounds like you are.
Yeah.
And you're just bound to be successful. I just a matter of doing the more specific research and getting the answers and getting the whys. And like I said, you can hit me up anytime you want.
I appreciate it, man. I definitely will. Definitely will. I'll keep you posted on the progress, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
See you, man. Bye.
All right, bye.